Each and everyone, and have a fantastic day. We, Group 1, were assigned to discuss Asia's notable writers and greatest literary pieces. So without further ado, let's start. Before we get into the writers and their literary works, let's define Asian literature. And here is Miss Gladys Rio Florido to tell us what it is.
What is Asian literature? Asian literature is known to be a philosophical and contemplative art, pondering major life issues such as where we come from and where we go, how we come alive and how we die, and how we should live in between. Besides this, Asian literature greatly talks about race, injustice, power, nationalism, struggles, love, and all things at all times. There are morals to be learned. Asian literature covers a wide range of genres. It primarily consists of Asian literature authored by Asian authors. There are bigger areas that incorporate Asian literature as a result of immigration and colonization. There is Asian American literature, which is written from the perspective of Asian Americans and tells their stories, lives, and history. India, Hong Kong, and writing from countries that were previously colonized by the British Empire are all examples of post-colonial literature. The study of Asian literature is as diverse as the Asian people themselves. Asian literature has impacted our lives whether we know it or not. It is there in the way that we view certain aspects of life, such as struggles, injustices, death, and it is there in the way that we treat life itself. Throughout the years and until today, all over the world, Asian literature has helped shape our ideals and lifestyles. It is only right that we trace the origins of such a powerful medium that has moved our minds.
These are the notable writers and literary pieces that we are going to discuss. For notable writer, they are Dr. Jose Rizal, Khalil Gibran, Lipo, Murasaki Shikibu, Rabindranath Tagore, Lao Tzu, Shikamatsu Manzaemon, Maotsubu Basho, Confucius, Nick Joaquin, Omar Khayyam, and Wang Wei. And for Asia's greatest literary masterpiece, here are Noli Me Tangere, Gitanjali, Koran, Analects, Ramayana, The Tale of Hike, The Tale of Genji, A Portrait of the Artist as a Filipino, The Thousand and One Nights, or Arabian Nights, The Prophet, 4 books and 5 classics, and The Gulistan. And now, to start this, I know that a lot of you have a background knowledge about our first notable writer because we already studied it on our previous subject last semester and when we were in junior high and also in elementary days. And our first notable writer is Dr. Jose Rizal, and his real name was Jose Protasio Mercado Rizal y Alonso Villalonga. He was born on June 19, 1861 in Calamba, Laguna Province, and he is best known as the father of the Philippines or the national hero of the Philippines. Rizal was a polymath who became a visible leader of the Philippine nationalist movement at the end of the 19th century and symbolized the struggles against the European colonialism. Rizal was trained as a physician and he is a gifted linguist. Why? Because he can speak 10 languages fluently and converse in another 12 by the age of 30. He was a prominent epistolary writer, playwright, poet, essayist, novelist in both Spanish and Tagalog, experimental scientist, and a musician. Rizal wrote only 2 novels, and the first novel was entitled Noli Me Tangere, which was published on 1887, and the second one is the El Filibusterismo, which was published in 1891. These 2 novels were the best-known works of Dr. Jose Rizal and became the essential manuals for the Philippine independence movement. At the age of 5 of Rizal, he started making sketches using his own pencil and mold clay and wax objects that attract his fancy. And at the age of 8, Rizal wrote his first poem in his native language entitled Sa Aking Mga Kabata or To My Fellow Children. And he wrote it as an appeal to our Filipino people to love our national language. And when Rizal turned 15 and studied at Ateneo, he wrote an entitled Un Recuerdo a Mi Pueblo. Rizal is also a magician. He learns various tricks such as making coin appear and disappear on his finger and making a handkerchief vanish in the air. And he entertains his townspeople with magic lantern shows, and it is an ordinary lamp projected with shadows on a white screen. Rizal improved his marionette manipulation skills through puppet shows. He also exposes extensive knowledge of magic in chapters 17 and 18 of his second novel, which entitled El Filibusterismo. When Rizal is studying at Ateneo, he made a lot of literary pieces in terms of sculpture, poems, religious poems, and dramatic works. Let's first start with the sculpture that Rizal made at Ateneo. First is the image of the Virgin Mary. After Rizal made this, he impressed his Jesuit professor with his artistic skill, because he carved an image of the Virgin Mary in baticuling or Philippine hardwood with his pocket knife. Next is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. One of the professors of Rizal requested him to carve an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Ateneo students placed the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on the door of the dormitory, and it remained there for many years. For the poems that Rizal wrote in Ateneo, the first poem is Mi Primera Inspiración, or My First Inspiration. This poem was the first poem that Rizal wrote in Ateneo, and he dedicated it to his mother's birthday. Next, in 1875, he was inspired by Father Chances, so that he wrote more poems, and those are Felicitación or Felicitation, El Embarque, Himno a la Flota de Magallanes, or the Departure Hymn to Magellan's Fleet. Y es Español Elcano, or the first to circumnavigate the world, and El Combate Urbistondo, Terror of Jolo, or the Battle of Urbistondo, Terror of Jolo. In 1876, Rizal published several works including Un Recuerdo a mi Pueblo, or in English, In Memory of My Town. Like I said earlier, he wrote it when he was 15 years old. And next is Alianza Intima entre la Religión y la Buena Educación, or Intimate Alliance between Religion and Good Education. And por la educación recibe lustre la patria, or through education the country received light. Then, Y Cultivero y el Triunfo, or the captivity and the triumph battle of Lucena and the imprisonment of Baudil. And La Entrada Triunfal de los Reyes Catolices en Granada, or the triumphal entry of the Catholic monarchs into the Granada. In 1877, he published more poems including El Heroísmo de Colón y Juan II, or Columbus and John II. Next is Gran Consuelo en la Mayor Desdicha, or Great Solace in Great Misfortune, and Un Jargo alusivo a la despedida de los colegiales, or the farewell dialogue of the students. And then Rizal wrote a religious poem, and that's our Al Niño Jesus, or to the Child of Jesus, and which is brief ode, and it was written when Rizal was 14 years old. The next one is called A Virgen Maria, or to the Virgin Mary. For dramatic work of Rizal at Ateneo, Rizal's favorite teacher in Ateneo, Father Chances, asked him to write a play based on the prose story of Saint Eustace the Martyr. And in the summer in 1876 in Calamba, he wrote a religious drama in poetic verse. On June 2, 1876, when Rizal finished the manuscript, he submitted his manuscript entitled San Eustacio Martyr, or Saint Eustace the Martyr, to Father Chances in his academic year at Ateneo. Now let's go to the literary piece that Rizal used in the contest. The Liceo Artistico Literano, or the Artistic Literary Lyceum, conducted a contest. And since it is a society of literary men and artists, they held that literary contest. Rizal was 18 years old at that time, and he submitted his poem entitled A la Juventud Filipina, or to the Filipino Youth. The board of judges was composed of Spanish, and they gave the first prize to Rizal. which consisted of silver pen in the shape of feather and decorated with gold ribbon, and it was in 1879. The next is the Council of Gods in 1880. To honor the first anniversary of the death of the Cervantes, Spain's revered man of letters and famous author of Don Quixote. The Artistic Literary Lyceum opened another literary contest for both Filipinos and Spaniards. Rizal won the first prize for his allegorical drama, El Consejo de los Dioses, or the Council of Gods, which inducted a gold ring with a bust of Cervantes engraved on it. And for other literary works of Rizal, here are Junto al Pasig or Beside the Pasig in the year 1880. Next is A Filipinas, also in the year 1880. And Abd el Aziz in the year 1879. And lastly is ARMRP Pablo Ramon 1881.
Murasaki Shikibu is a Japanese author, poet, and lady in waiting who wrote the Genji Monogatari or The Tale of Genji. It was considered as one of the greatest works of Japanese literature and the world's oldest novel. She was born to the Fujiwara family in 973 AD. Her real name is unknown, as was common for daughters at the time. Murasaki, which means purple wisteria blossom. It was inspired by one of the characters in her novel, The Tale of Genji. Shikibu refers to her father's official position. Her father was a well-known scholar who also served as a governor of a Japanese province. She married a much older distant cousin, Fujiwara Nobutaka, and had a daughter with him, but he died after only 2 years of marriage. Then later on, Murasaki began writing the tale of Genji, an intricate saga of romance and intrigue in the life of an imperial prince. Because of her status as a writer, she was asked as a young woman to serve as a lady-in-waiting to Empress Soshi at the imperial court. Then she became the Empress' companion and tutor. 3 works that are attributed to Murasaki: The Tale of Genji, The Diary of Murasaki, Poetic Memoirs. It is a collection of 128 poems. Her story made history because it was more than just a story. It was a complex literary portrait of what it means to be human. No one is sure exactly when Murasaki died, but the legacy she left behind changed the Japanese literature and left a mark on the broader world of fiction that can never be erased.
Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam was born in Nishapur, Persia now known as Iran, on May 18, 1048 and died on December 14, 1131. He was a Persian polymath, poet, historian, philosopher, and mathematician. He is known for writing various books before the age of 25, including Problems of Arithmetic, a book, of, a book on music, and a book on algebra book. Even though he has contribution to mathematics, Khayyam's biggest achievement is that he is the author of the Rubaiyat, a collection of quatrains written at least 100 years ago. Additionally, Rubaiyat is an 1859 work on the astronomer poet of Persia. He includes a collection of hundreds of quatrains or rubaiyats. Omar poetry followed the other tradition of this genre by celebrating the joy of wine and the homosexual love with a humorous skepticism, wit, and poetic skill. Lastly, Khayyam literary popularity has led many to overlook his far more significant scientific contributions.
Nick Joaquin or Nicomedes Joaquin. He was born on May 4, 1917 in Paco, Manila, Philippines, and died on April 29, 2004 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He is a Filipino novelist, poet, playwright, essayist, and a biographer whose works present the diverse heritage of the Filipino people. Following the publication of his article, La Naval de Manila in 1943, a portrayal of the Manila's mythical resistance to the 17th century Dutch invaders, Joaquin was offered a scholarship to a Dominican monastery in Hong Kong. He traveled to the United States and Mexico and Spain after the World War II, subsequently acting as the Philippine cultural representative in Taiwan, Cuba, and China. He was well known as the historian of Spain's brief golden age in the Philippines, as well as the writer of the folk Roman Catholic short stories, a playwright and a novelist. His writings were written in English. Numerous individuals consider Nick Joaquin to be the most well-known Filipino writer in English. Having written so many different parts of the Filipino culture, the English language has also improved, with the reviewers coining the term Joaquinesque to designate the Baroque Spanish favored English or his Filipino-based reinventors of English. Among his valiant works are The Woman Who Had Two Novels, a portrait of the artist as a Filipino, Manila, My Manila, a history for the young, The Ballad of the Five Bottles, Rizal in Zaga, Almanac for Manileños, Cave and Shadows.
Confucius. His original name is Gongqiu and literary name is Zhongni, better known in China as Master Kong. He is a Chinese teacher and philosopher. The Chinese teacher and philosopher Confucius was the founder of the school of philosophy known as the Jew or Confucianism, which is still very influential in China. Confucius was born on 551 BCE into China, born near the end of an era known in Chinese history as the Spring and Autumn period. His parents were Kong He and Yang Zhengzai. According to some reports, Confucius' early ancestors were the Kong from the state of Song, an aristocratic family that produced several eminent counselors of the Song rulers. Confucius is known as the first teacher in China who wanted to make education broadly available and who was instrumental in establishing the art of teaching as a vocation. He also established ethical, moral, and social standards that form the basis of a way of life known as Confucianism. He died on 479 BCE in Khufu, China. He was hailed after his death as the uncrowned king because of the Chinese philosopher still affects the lives of nearly a quarter of humanity. Confucius is one of the notable writer because of his Confucianism. One of the main reasons Confucian ethics had a significant impact on society is that it influenced religions, governments, and education. Many aspects of the Confucian idea can still be found in the Chinese people's way of life today. The most obvious is its influence on the family unit.
Wang Wei, also known as Mochi, was a Chinese poet and painter who lived in the Tang Dynasty. He was born in 699 and died at the age of 60 in Qi country, Xinzhong, Sanchi. He also came from the family that had produced 13 prime ministers for Tang Place and Po Chu, now Feiyang country in Shachi province. He, he was one of the most well-known letters and artists for his time. Wang is well known for his humanistic education, poetry, musical, and artistic expression. Many of Wang Wei's quatrains show calm scenes of water and mist with few details and minimal human presence. At present, 420 poems are credited to Wang Wei, of which 370 are regarded to be genuine. One of Wang Wei's famous poems is One-Hearted.
Rabindranath Tagore is a well-known Bengali poet, musician, painter, and artist. He was born in a wealthy Brahmin family in Kolkata, India in 1861. Tagore had a great influence on Bengali culture and on India as a whole. Two songs from his Rabindra Sangeet are now the national anthem of India and Bangladesh, the Jana Gana Mana and the Amar Sonar Bangla. In 1913, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Tagore was not only known for his writing, he was also heavily involved in film. His poems and songs are still sung throughout the world, and many of his short stories and novels have been adapted into films. Among his 50 and odd volumes of poetry are Manasi 1890, The Ideal One, Sonar Tari 1894, The Golden Boat, Gitanjali 1910, The Song Offerings, Gitemalya 1914, The Wreath of Songs, and The Balaka 1916, The Flight of Cranes. The English renderings of his poetry are The Gardener 1913, The Food Gathering 1916, and The Fugitive 1921. Tagore's major plays are Raha 1910, The King of the Dark Chamber, Dakkar 1912, The Post Office, Achalyata 1912, The Immovable, Muktadhara 1922, The Waterfall, and Raktarkaravi 1926 or The Red Oleanders. He is the author of several volumes of short stories and a number of novels. Gora 1910, Gariber 1916 or The Home and the World, and Yogayog 1929 or The Cross Currents. Beside this, he wrote musical dramas, dance dramas, essays, travel diaries, and autobiographies. Tagore also left numerous drawings, paintings, and songs for which he wrote the music himself. His works brings everything from history to philosophy to life with unparalleled depth. His poems are powerful not only because they are relatable, but also they challenge readers to question their own values and ideas about life, spirituality, art, and other topics.
Li Bai, also known as Li Bu, he is a Chinese poet. He born on 701 AD or Anno Domini. The exact location of his birth is unknown, but it is believed in the Central Asia. He died on 762 AD in Dangtu Anhui province. Li Bai was also a skilled in a calligrapher. And this is the only surviving calligraphy of Li Bai's own handwriting that existed. Titled Shang Shang Tai means going up to the Sun Terrace, located at the Palace Museum in Beijing, China. Next, Du Fu, friend of Li Bai, and also a Chinese poet and a politician of Tang Dynasty. He also called a greatest of the Chinese poets.